This video is brought to you by Nebula. Now, here on the TLDR News UK channel, a lot of what we cover is developments in the House of Commons. We release videos about bills going through the Commons, changes in the composition of the House, and any major drama happening on the floor of the House. We rarely, though, look at the other place, the House of Lords. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the House of Lords, looking at what it does, and then looking at the arguments in favour of reforming it and of keeping it. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, it's worth starting this video by having a look at exactly what the House of Lords is and what it does. The House of Lords is composed of around 800 unelected people known as peers, who sit on the famous red benches and help draft the laws of the land. Now, unlike members of the House of Commons, they're appointed for life, meaning that political parties have much less influence over their behaviour in the House. They don't have to act in a certain way to please the electorate or the whips, because ultimately neither can take their jobs away from them. It's for this reason that they provide much of the scrutiny of legislation going through Parliament. They often look at legislation line by line, and will sometimes amend legislation, effectively asking the Commons, "Are you sure you want to do this?" When it comes down to it, asking this question is all the Lords can really do, because the Commons is able to overturn the Lords, although it is worth noting that the Lords have the ability to delay legislation as per the Parliament Acts. Now, one of the most recent attempts to shake up how the House of Lords works was the introduction of the Hereditary Peers Abolition Bill. If you want to know more about this, we made a full video about it, and it's linked below. Anyway, if you're not interested in watching the full video, essentially the Labour government are pressing ahead with a bill that will get rid of the remaining 92 hereditary peers, those that inherited their position in the Lords from their parents. However, even if this bill passes, there'll still be around 700 unelected members of the House of Lords that can make fundamental changes to legislation in the UK. Some argue then that the government isn't going far enough with their reform of the Lords. So in this next section, we're going to have a look into the arguments in favour of reform or abolition of the House of Lords before moving on and having a look at some of the arguments against this. Now, when people say they want to go further with Lords reform, they usually do so by appealing to three arguments: that the Lords are overpaid, that they don't work very hard, and that they're undemocratic. So let's have a look at these in turn. Now, firstly, Lords don't actually get paid to be Lords. Instead, the system works on expenses and allowances. If a Lord turns up to the chamber and contributes to a debate, votes in a division, and attends a meeting, then they're entitled to an allowance of around £300. If they travel into Westminster, they are additionally usually allowed to claim back travel expenses. In 2018-19, the average tax-free payment to members of the House of Lords was around £30,827, more than the median salary of the UK at the time. It's worth noting too that the House only sits half the year. And, well, there's also been some allegations that the Lords have deliberately worked the system in order to get their money. The Electoral Reform Society showed that in 2017, 115 Lords failed to speak at all, and claimed an average of £11,091 each. Similarly, The Guardian showed in 2019 that one peer claimed around £50,000 in attendance and travel expenses, yet never spoke or asked any written questions. The point is, the House of Lords is costly, and there are plenty of examples of the taxpayer not getting value for money. Another key argument against the House of Lords is that they don't work very hard. As many are appointed for life, there's no requirement for them to actually turn up and contribute to the system. In fact, only last week, Tortoise Media conducted an investigation and found that around a quarter of Lords do 2/3 of the work. Now, to be fair, this isn't all that surprising. The chamber is absolutely massive. With around 800 members, it's actually the world's second largest chamber after China's National People's Congress. It's just not possible for all of them to be involved in constructive debate, and it was inevitable that a small proportion of them end up doing all the work. Either reforming or abolishing the chamber would fix this. And finally, the last argument is that the House of Lords in its current form doesn't belong in a modern democratic society. The average age in the Lords is 70, and female representation is only 28%. It's simply not representative of modern Britain. This, combined with the politicised appointments process and lifelong nature of the position, is an affront to the principles of representative democracy, even if the Lords' power is usually advisory. However, there are those that defend the current system. These arguments are usually twofold: that the Lords are actually very good at their job in holding the Commons to account, and their unelected nature merely affirms the supremacy of the elected lower chamber. Let's go through these in turn. Firstly, the House of Lords has been very good in recent years in trying to stop governments encroaching on democratic principles. A good example of this is the Police Crime Court and Sentencing Act. When this went through the Lords, they inflicted 14 defeats on the government, with them mainly doing so in order to protect the principle of the right to protest. This was also true during the Brexit process, when the Lords voted 433 to 165 to remove a clause that would have allowed government ministers to break international law. This leads us on to the second argument. The only reason that they were able to stand up to the government is precisely because they're not democratically elected. In both of these examples, the government, acting on behalf of the people that elected them, were trying to fix shorter-term problems. In the former case, cracking down on disruptive environmental protests, and in the latter, trying to get Brexit done. The Lords took a step back from this, and argued that in trying to do so, they were breaking more fundamental principles. Sure, they weren't able to stop the government entirely, as their job is merely advisory. However, House of Lords advocates would argue that this is the right balance, and one that has proven to work time and time again. Anyway, these are the two sides of the debate. We'll leave it up to you to fight it out in the comments to decide whether we should radically change the Lords, or just leave it alone. As you've probably noticed, the news cycle is particularly fast right now, with coups, elections and governmental gossip happening all over the world. In fact, with Trump heading into the White House, that chaos is only likely to get worse. If you're feeling a little lost and even a little depressed, then you might want to check out our series WTF USA, where we explain everything that's happened across the pond in the land of the free. Because while the election might be over, the number of WTF moments only looks likely to increase. Unlike some of our other more serious videos, the tone of WTF USA is more light-hearted and takes something of an irreverent look at what's going on. Regular viewers will be pleased to hear that the series has been extended due to overwhelmingly popular demand over on Nebula.
If these trends continue, hey!
Now, if you didn't know, Nebula is an independent, creator-owned streaming platform that specialises in thoughtful content. Over there, you can find creators like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, and Legal Eagle, with many of them releasing their very own original series on the platform. We're super proud of WTF USA, and we hope that with your support, we'll be able to make other interesting, weird, and entertaining series with Nebula in the future. So signing up genuinely helps TLDR to grow and expand. You can also watch every normal TLDR video on Nebula ad-free, and in some instances before they land on YouTube. If you're not a member already, then click our link in the description to get 40% off. That's just $30 a year or $2.50 a month. We really hope you check out the series, and as always, thanks for your support.